You'll be you record it, but it can be we're wiped out if we'll say anything against KGB, CIA, FBI, and Pentagon.
Or in this country,
What was the topic?
uh,
You said we're having a topic. You didn't say what the topic was.
Bob, go ahead, announce the topic.
no, I just wanted to talk. I think we've talked on this subject a little bit in the past, but I want to go a little bit more into it, especially with all you Israeli guys, and understand, from my vantage point in Atlanta, in the United States, how Israelis view their relationship to the land and their ownership of the land. And, it's a complex and long subject. I'll just touch on a couple of ideas and then let you guys talk about, your thoughts about it. It all begins with Rashi's commentary on Bereshit, which we all know about. And Rashi says that the reason that God created heaven and earth was simply to prove to the non-Jews and to the Jews that God owns everything, and God will give the land to whomever he wants to give it to. And God chose not to give it to the seven nations or to anyone else, but to give it to us. And yet that whole statement of who owns the land or what exactly did God give us is really up in the air. And traditionally, for instance, it is considered a mitzvah to purchase a house from a non-Jew, and so much so that it is probably one of the few mitzvot that you could say is docha that overrides the Shabbos. You can even purchase a home from a non-Jew on the Shabbos. But again, it talks about the home and not the land. It says, we can purchase the home, and yet we also know that Abraham actually did purchase land from the non-Jews. He purchased Hebron. He purchased the Cave of Machpelah. And not only did he purchase it, but it appears that he did so in a way that violates Torah mitzvot, because he paid at least more than a sixth more than the value of the land. So he seemed almost desperate to purchase that land as proof. So this all started with me because I've been reading Ramban on the Jubilee year, and the Jubilee year seems to really reinforce the fact that we do not own the land. We cannot sow the land. We cannot eat anything from the land that we put into it on the 7th and the 50th year, which is a Jubilee year. And not only that, but we have to go into the land and take whatever gleanings come out of it, just like the animals do, and just like the poor people do. Everyone is equal, taking whatever they want from the land, because basically it's ownerless at that time. It's ownerless in the 7th year. So this is further proof that we do not own the land. It was kind of interesting about this thing about that buying a house. The Shulchan Aruch, I'm reading from Shulchan Aruch, it is permitted to buy a house from a non-Jew on Shabbos and seal and go to the non-Jewish courts. And I found that kind of interesting. The desperation with which we want to take any structure from a non-Jew, but do we take land from a non-Jew? It says there's a great debate among halakhic authorities as to the modern day obligation to live in the land of Israel. But what about just buying land in Israel, not just for the purchase of settling land? Is that a mitzvah? So there's questions today about whether we even have an obligation to go to Israel and buy land. There is no positive obligation for a Jew to buy land in Israel. Well, that's according to one of the rabbis. Anyway, I could go on and on with this, but I'd like to hear from you guys about the concept. Why did Abraham buy land? Why did he pay so much? He supposedly followed the rules of Torah. Was he allowed to buy land in Israel? Is the land really ours, considering the Jubilee year, that basically we lose the land It goes back to the tribes. And every 7 years, we're not allowed to even touch our land. Do these laws even exist anymore before the coming of the third temple? So anyway, any thoughts on these concepts? What do you guys feel about the land you own in Israel, about your rights, about your homes, about your obligations? Are you obligated to buy a house from a Christian because a Christian may be avodah zarah? Do Muslims have a right to own land and homes in Israel because they actually worship one God as we do? What do Israelis think about these concepts?
I should get out my sale contract, because as far as I'm concerned, as far as I understand, I register the land that I bought with Minhal Makarkain, with the land registry. And that provides me with ownership of the house, of the land that my house is on for 49 years.
Oh.
And then I have to renegotiate that ownership of the land. For me, the issue of Yovel and 50 years is a moot point, because right now we don't have the Sanhedrin to establish which year is the year of the Jubilee and how many years to count, whether we count 49 or 50. So that will have to wait for a Sanhedrin. I don't think we need a third temple for that. So that's a separate issue. In terms of whether we should even be here, I think that we've passed through many generations since Rav Kook embraced everybody who came here to work and build the country, the Medina, and to work on the land and to study Torah and to do whatever they did. Chiloni, Haredi, everybody. There has not been an inclusive person like him ever since him, and that's 100 years. Oh, yeah, he was World War I. And so you're raising a lot of interesting philosophical questions. Yay!
My
Okay.
favorite too, Rav Kook.
Your friend, he's sitting
God is always watching the land of Israel.
Yeah.
And he wants us to live there. And but living there is dependent on us keeping the Torah mitzvahs. If we turn to avodah zarah, he's going to kick us out. And then it says the rest year, they'll have all the rest years it needs. Some people say that for all the Yovels and the Shemitas that were ignored in ancient Israel, that's he kicked us out for that amount of time, equivalent, to each 7-year cycle. It says that nobody else can own it. It's our land forever, but either God will allow us to live there or he'll kick us out of it. We're not supposed to be able to leave Israel. Once you move to Israel, it's actually a big halakhic problem if you're allowed to leave. You're allowed to leave for a certain thing. You're allowed to leave to get married. You're allowed to leave if you need parnasa. I can't think of any others. Are there any others? What's the third one?
There's a third. I think it's find a match.
Other than if you get married. For a marriage, you can leave the land of Israel.
So you can't leave for a brief period if you have business overseas, for instance?
Business, you can leave briefly for business. I remember it was a problem that Rambam briefly tried to move to Israel, and then he eventually relocated to Egypt. And Rambam, that was an issue if he was allowed to leave. I guess Parnasa, there was basically no Parnasa for him in Israel. but we pray towards Israel. It says the air of Israel makes you wise.
Okay.
I want to ask you guys, because you might know more than me about this. Who was the Bechor Shur? Was he a famous rabbi? Does anyone know the name? It says
I
here,
don't
why
know.
would the Bechor Shur advance the idea that the land of Israel cannot be truly bought or sold? Perhaps we must look further no more than Vayikra 23, but the land must not be sold beyond reclaim, for the land is mine. You are but strangers resident with me. That's Vayikra.
Yeah.
The Torah tells us in no uncertain term that God owns the land of Israel. We are to be but residents in the land owned by God. It is not ours to buy, nor is it ours to sell.
Yeah.
All the earth, and Rashi says, goes on, all the earth belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He created it, etc., etc. So, but you were saying, Yonatan, that your lease says you own the land under your house?
So I
You
had
only lease it from the government. From the government, you lease the land for 49 years, but you don't actually own the land. It's being leased, and then you have to negotiate the lease. And then basically, the government owns the land.
Very strange
Yeah,
rule that the government thinks
yeah,
it right.
it's kind of unique. Oh, there was a third reason you can leave Israel to study Torah. That was your third one.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
You can leave Israel for financial reasons, for study Torah, or to make a shidduch. Yeah.
I tell you, interesting.
What is the attitude towards non-Jews owning land in Israel?
By the Orthodox, it's discouraged. By the non-religious, they don't seem to care.
I'll show you this, guys. I wrote this book. See this book, I think I told you. It's a 400 pages book. It's all my biography. Okay. And in this book, one of the things I did, there's a chart. This chart goes is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the left side, the generations from Abraham to like 14 generations to put it, mine. And in this, my cousin Yaakov, who's now in Los Angeles, it's my fourth cousin. He sent me this after he read the book. He sent me these things. And it's all in Hebrew, but I'll show you. He owns the land. His grandfather. It's very interesting. Look at it. One of them is in English. One of them in English. And it says, Palestine government, District of Galilee, the village of Bat Dilaya El Sakwa. He bought lot such and such, so many dunam, and it's registered in Israel Nelik. There's a stamp and everything. So I own, my family owns, so he bought, of course, it has block, it shows a map and everything, but it's still just like Jonathan and Reuven said, it doesn't make practical difference because according to the Torah, of course, you never lose the land. You got the land, and it after Jubilee it comes back. So whether I have now, like Jonathan said, he had a 49 years lease. He has no limitations how can he use it. And after 49 years, it will be another 49 years, and it will just go perpetuity. So essentially, I don't see any practical difference. And the point is, the land, now, of course, in non-biblical times, like when we go by the civil non-religious laws, the land gets sold to the Arabs, and Arabs sold to the Jews, and Jews sold it to Chinese, so to whoever go back and forth. So this house is owned by Chinese guy who came in from China 10 years ago, and he lives here. But it's only the building. The land itself really doesn't change ownership. It always belongs to God, and usage of that is allocated to a particular tribe. We don't know now, of course, where the tribes are. We mixed around, was exiled, but theoretically, it's just forever, as Reuven said, as long as we don't screw up and don't get caused to get Hatzvah Halila gets kicked out of it.
Well, that goes back to
He said
Abraham.
this generation is going to be Mashiach, so I don't think we have to worry about being kicked out.
Oh man, Reuven.
Maybe kicked in.
Kicked in. I think kicking in will happen big time. Big time. I tell you also another practical example. We in our area, you guys, Jonathan and Ruben, especially will be interested, and you, Bob, also will be interested because your son lives here, right? So here's the link. And there's a big thing in Israel called pinoi binoi. Pinoi means demolish and binoi build. They take the area. There's a lot of aging infrastructure. Like probably 80% of Israel is like 50, 60, 70-year-old buildings, all built in like early 1960s, 1970s. So they are like 50-year-old buildings and so. So what government does essentially, they come in, let's say we live in a building. They go to Kablan, the contractor. Contractor will come, give you temporarily somewhere rent for which they pay. They knock down the building. On top, on that place they'll build. Bob, are you familiar with that? Pinoi Binoi? Bob, just make sure. No. So they knock down the building and they build. We have a 4 stories building, an old building, and we have maybe, I don't know, 40 people living here or something like that. And they will build a new building, maybe 20 stories high. So the first, let's say 3 or 4 stores occupied, just given to us. So let's say you get out and 5 years later you move back in and you live in modern places, nothing leaks, electricity works, beautiful. And the rest of it from floor number 5, let's say, to 20, they sell, and that's how they make money. But the thing is, many people, like we live in Shonahei, there's a lot of the T people, and they don't like the modernity of Israeli high-rise constructions. They say, we don't want to be like New York City or Los Angeles. We want to preserve the nature of Israel, small places, like quaint and all that. But if you do that, the contractor cannot afford. Contractor needs to sell roughly, economically calculate 5-to-1, maybe 7-to-1 ratio. So 4 floors must become 25 floors in order to make money. So what do? Contracts say, I cannot do it in these things. And people say, we want Pinoi Binoi, but we don't want high-rise buildings. So what's the dilemma? If you don't want to do it, just leave here and just wait till your building crumbles and just live in a parking lot. So the solution to that, you can give it to the contractor. He will build, let's say, instead of 4-story building, 8-story building. But then the city of Beersheba will give him extra land outside Beersheba. You cannot do it in the center, in Tel Aviv or in the Haria when now Jonathan lives, because they don't have much room to expand. They're surrounded by the ocean. But in Beersheba cases, we have hundreds of miles of the desert. So you can go to the desert, Beersheba municipality can say, contractor, listen, we hold this land, take it. It's a people's land. Take the land, contractor goes to this land, builds a bunch of buildings there for free. So now they save a lot of money not building it. And they sell that. And that's why they make money by getting free land from a government. And people are satisfied because now we have all modern club. The problem with that is that the city of Beersheba, here it is, to go outside Beersheba, let's say a kilometer into the desert, and there's not a kilometer, but hundreds of kilometers, it doesn't belong to Beersheba. The word belong, what does it mean to your point, Bob? Do they own it, land or lease land? Beersheba cannot. The mayor of Beersheba and the municipal council can say, take it. Because that land, and let me use the term loosely, owned by the government, owned by Medina, it's owned by the state. So technically, Beersheba is, if there's no bureaucracy, if it was in America, Beersheba go to Medina and said, listen, guys, you, Mr. Netanyahu, you sit in Jerusalem, you don't care, give us the land. And he would say, sure, take it, I don't need it. And it will work. But in reality, they say, no, we cannot do it. We want to sell it. This money goes back and forth, back and forth. Now, of course, there's a precedent. We have several areas in Beersheba, the area called Ramot, that did expand beyond Beersheba. So anyway, that's just a practical example of the current situation of people struggling for. But fundamentally, it's not a good illustration was the land. It doesn't answer exactly your question, but illustrates a little practical example that people use the term owning the land or giving the land loosely, meaning contractor takes this land, whether you actually own it or you lease it for 49 years. But you can say, what if a contractor takes it for 49 years and builds 20 stories building? What happens 49 years later? Would government come and tell people who live here, okay, guys, you have to get out of here because we'll put the army base there? It's a little bit unknown.
What questions did you have? What are specific things else did you want to know about our relationship to Israel?
What I was really very interested in I mean, I understand, I see what you're saying, that the government, it really represents the people and is not really giving you the land, it just gives you the right to build on it.
and use
But,
it.
Yeah.
but the relationship of, for instance, you said it yourself, Lev, the non-Jews, I guess they are given the right to build on the land, but they can't own the land any more than you can. Is there any question how foreigners or non-Jews can be given the right to build on the land? Because that really is a violation of.
Well, when I answered that because when I was in America before Aliyah, I bought the apartment where I'm in for my mother. It was on my
You're a
name.
Jew. You're a Jew.
But at that time, if I want to sell it to an Arab, I could. I could even do now. We have neighbors, Arabs,
We're doing Nahariya.
and they have the same type of contract that Jonathan have.
Well, what is your feeling about Arabs being allowed to buy homes?
I can't say because they will close my YouTube clip on that.
Yeah, right. Because we cannot speak on Zoom because the world is listening.
That's right.
I mean,
but you got
okay,
the answer, right?
so here's my woke answer. You know, the Arabs are our brothers and we should all love each other, but there's specific rules about the land of Israel. And it also.
Well, but actually, let's say seriously to answer a question, I think, Bob, is that the Torah says that and it's not only Jews have a right to live and use the land, but they have to abide by 7 Noahic laws, which it doesn't include Shabbat, but essentially they're as nice, decent people, law-abiding people, and not to be idol worshippers.
There is that confluence of different ideas. You are not allowed it's an obligation to buy a house from a idol worshiper. You are not allowed to sell to a non-Jew, and yet it's slightly different with Muslims because they're monotheistic.
But clarify to us, maybe I missed it. Where does the Torah, not the oral Torah, where does the written Torah, 5 books of Moses, say that I can't sell it to the non-Jew?
I have to go back and
I have a feeling it doesn't.
I have to find that. Hold on.
Oh, the Arabs have a law you can't sell to Jews. That's very strict.
This is actually an OU site, Orthodox Union. It says, what about just buying land in Israel?
Do they call passages from the Torah?
It says the Talmud, Avodah Zarah, in Avodah Zarah 20a, establishes that it is prohibited to sell land in Israel to non-Jews. However, for a variety of reasons, this prohibition does not necessarily indicate that there is a positive obligation for a Jew to buy land in Israel. So it says it's in Talmud, Avodah Zarah 20a. I don't have that in front of me.
I have a copy, but the Torah, 5 books, doesn't say that.
Well, I mean, it says in Talmud, that's good enough.
Not good enough.
No?
Mm-mm. For me, not.
Yeah,
I mean, it leaves the question open.
The DNA of Judaism is the entire, Torah, which includes the Talmud. So if you break off from the Talmud, then you really don't have anything.
Also, mitzvah, I have chinuch here, mitzvah 94, we are commanded not to cause worshippers of Avodah Zarah to dwell in our land. As it is stated in Bereshit 23, quote, they shall not dwell in your land lest they cause you to sin against me.
But we don't have them really, Bob. I mean, we probably have like 2 guys in Tel Aviv.
At the same time, even in this week's Parsha, it says you have to be extra kind to the ger, the yosam, the almona.
No, that's
to the.
No, but Ger is a convert, Bob.
No, Ruvain, they're talking about Ger Tzadi.
The convert. Okay.
It's a Jew, convert.
I know. I was just reading the book of Yeshua, and he just went around massacring everybody. I mean, he just, it really was. It was ethnic cleansing, literally.
But my personal feeling, you have to be careful with that because you're right. Like Ruben just mentioned, there's a Talmud view and strict 5 books view and all that. My personal view, without really base, is like it's very dangerous because let's say we sell the land to the non-Jews. Let's say they have big price, and let's say 90% of landowners and people in Israel becomes non-Jews, and they have a vote, democratic country. The Jews should go to Cyprus, and they put them also in a boat and send us to Cyprus. That's not a good thing. So we have to be careful practically not to squander the land.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the commentary of Art Scroll. So that others, however, disagree and rule that this prohibition applies only to the 7 Canaanite nations, as per the simple reading of the verse and its context.
Okay.
Actually, Rashi said that. So
There you
it is
go.
possible. What? So it is possible that the idea of buying or selling land or a house to a non-Jew really should only be read in its simplest way of applying to the Canaanite nations and not to modern day Christians or Muslims.
Yeah, but I still
Like the way we'd like to, the way we would like to apply it.
if a non-Jew wants to buy my house, I'm not going to sell.
Yeah, well,
No,
that
sell.
seems to be the general interpretation. Here, like I said, the commentary is that this idea of not being allowed to sell your house really does just apply to the 7 Canaanite nations.
That's great. Now we know we're safe.
Now you're safe. You can sell to all the Chinese people you want.
No, but we're not going to do it. I bet Reuven and Jonathan wouldn't save either. We're not
What, you
sell.
wouldn't sell to me?
No. Jonathan would not sell to Chinese, and Reuven also wouldn't sell to Chinese.
You would only sell to Jews, right?
I would only sell to Jews. No matter if they pay me $1 billion, I wouldn't sell. Bli neder.
Well, it's an issue too, because in Judea and Samaria, a Jew cannot buy a house.
You can? Why not?
No, you can't, because if an Arab sells to you, they are put to death.
Well, that's their problem. Why should I worry about that? We have a lot of settlements all over Judea and Samaria. And Smotrich and Ben Gvir wants to put another 1 million people there. They, as we speak, they're bulldozers are building more houses. They're doing
No, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about Arabs selling to Jews. The Palestinian Authority doesn't let Arabs sell to Jews.
And they probably now no Jews will buy it from them, because if those, you're driving, if you drove through Judea and Samaria, I'm sure. You're driving there, and there's an A, B, C area. When you go to C area, it says red, you're going to your own life risk. I wouldn't go there. So if you go there, there's no Jews. If one Jew comes there, it's one less Jew come out. So in practice, it doesn't happen that Arabs would all, just imagine who would want to buy the land in a village of Arab village in area C, whatever it's called, that you will be like a village of 2,000 Arabs and you'll be one Jew. You'll be only staying there for 5 minutes. You'll be gone next day. Next morning, get up, where are you? Oh, God, I don't know what happened to this guy. So in practice, it will never happen. Arabs will not sell it because we don't want to be there. They don't want to sell it to us. Practice, it just works out just fine.
Well, it's interesting to me, Yonatan and Reuben, that you have that feeling or desire that if you were to sell your house, you would prefer to sell to a Jew. See, to me, there's an education to see how Israelis feel.
Yeah, that's always the back of my mind. I think I have running around a sort of Godfather scenario where they make me an offer I can't refuse. That's a very difficult position to be in. We have roving gangs in Nahariya. My daughter helped to point them out to me, because a lot of them are simply teenage vandals on bicycles. And so they can get away from any cop chasing them. And they are experts at theft and vandalism. And if somebody wants to buy a house from me, a non-Jew, and decides to make me an offer I can't refuse, because if I do refuse, I won't have much of a house left to live in.
Who are these gangs? Are they Arabs or what are they?
Yeah.
They're
Well,
Arabs?
I don't want to get booted off YouTube, but a lot of them come from across the highway. Some of them are simply, as you have in North America, they're just bored teenagers who've come into a gang because nobody feels adequate, And so one ringleader says, let's go do stuff. I mean, I still think about some of the stuff that I did as a teenager that I'm horribly, I'm abhorred at what I did, like on Halloween.
Oh, come on, Yonatan. We were all teenagers once.
Oh
Now
my
we know
goodness. Yeah,
Jonathan was a
did you
gangster,
ever,
just like the rest of us.
did you throw eggs at passing cars?
I did a lot worse than that.
One time,
Well, I repent for the people who in the morning, if they didn't wash off their car at the time, they had cement on their windshield and on their side of their cars. I don't know how you get dried up egg off a car. It is difficult, and I'm repentant for that action among many others, but that's a big one.
I think you're forgiven by now.
There's one thing I don't repent, even though
Too
it's
good
wrong.
repetition.
As a kid, we were playing soccer, a whole bunch of us. And then we were playing soccer inside in the yard where sometimes the ball will go to the windows of people and we won't break the glass, but close. And one lady really hated us. And she really hated me just because, and also because I was Jewish. And one time she came out and told me, you dirty Jew, you're coming here and playing soccer and harassing everybody. And I was like maybe 7 years old. So I came home and like after dark, after 8, they came in and I took a big stone and threw it through her window. And thank God I didn't kill her. It went in, it was makes racket, boom, and I ran off. It was dark already. Came home. About half an hour later, this lady comes in, knocks on the door, tells my mother, your son just threw the stone on my thing. And I'm thinking, how would she know? And I'm sitting there, and my mother says to her, I know my son. My son will never do anything like that. I raised my son. He's a good kid. Don't accuse my son. Get out of my house. How dare you accuse my son, my wonderful boy, that is such an. And I'm sitting there quiet, like they didn't say anything. And then years later, my mother said, did you break her window? I said, Mom, now I can tell you I did that. For many years, I didn't admit I did. And to this day, I'm glad that I did that.
Yeah. And that's why we all study Torah now, to make up for our teenage years.
Yes. Well, we're gonna talk next time, guys. What next topic you have? Howard was quiet. He didn't mention anything today.
I do find it interesting to talk to you guys, to get the feelings of what's going on in Israel and how you feel about various things. But you also are not really a cross section of Israel because, all of us are a little bit more connected to Torah thought maybe than Rabbi Freeman, Lev, he calls Tel Aviv Medinat, the Medinat. It's a separate country. I don't think that they would agree with much of what we say here.
Well, you would think so, but you have to be very careful because I think I mentioned last time, you will see people that you foolish Babylonians, Bob, will call not. I'm just joking. You foolish Babylonians, you foolish Americans. Yeah. You would think that yes, and I remember when I was in Atlanta, I also felt, hey, till Tel Aviv, they all sell out, it's secular. But in reality, like I said, I mentioned last time, you would see the guy in Tel Aviv covered with tattoos, and yet he'll come to the small and he'll touch mezuzah. And if you need help, he'll be the first guy to help you. So we have to be very careful not to say something negative about fellow Jews, whether they live in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Narea, Haifa. We're all Abraham's children. We're all Jews, and we all have a hope, and we have to see good things. I see clips from Tel Aviv that you'll never think you'll see that, and you see things from Jerusalem sometimes that you wish you didn't see.
We love our fellow Jews. I invited someone over to a Rosh Hashanah dinner. He says I have to eat quick because I'm leaving for the Caribbean the next day on Rosh Hashanah. So that's okay. We like you anyway. Come visit. So Ruvain and Yonatan, why do you think of a topic for next week? It's your turn. The pressure's on.
You all have 55 seconds, guys.
Yeah, when's Rosh Hashanah?
Pause. And Carolyn Glick, he gave some background of where the split between the right and the left, mainly he says it occurred right after the Yom Kippur War. Sort of interesting. Let me see if I have time to put it together.
That sounds interesting.
This is basically the socialists felt that they were going to make a new country. There'd be no more pogroms. But what happened was at the Yom Kippur War, suddenly there was hundreds of funerals going on every day. And even though the guys in the front felt like there was a great success, but the people in the cities were very depressed. The people had come from Europe felt, oh, here's another pogrom.
Rolf, 11
So there was
seconds.
a split. But those who said, let's settle the land, we won, we're going to make a great Israel, and the others who said,
We'll
let's
hear
just
you
give
next
in
time on
to the
that.
Goyim